Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us today for a Strategic Priority Grants Overview session featuring Keith Whelan, the Grants Guy. Before we kick off, I just wanted to introduce myself to those in the room who haven't met yet me, who I am not already familiar with. My name is Michelle Swales. I'm recently in the local coordination team. Before that, working in public libraries for thousands of years. So very excited to be taking this on today on behalf of my colleague Gillian, who was lucky enough to have some overseas travel for today. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging on the lovely land of Meanjin where I am today, and also share my respects to the traditional owners of the lands where we are all situated today. And today that is quite the range across Queensland. So I'm feeling very connected to the land and very, very excited to have you all here sharing the oral tradition and having the discussions as has been continuing on our lands for millennia. So today the plan for the session is just to do a quick strategic priority grants overview, just to give you a little bit of a tips and tricks regarding the application process and the documents that we would like you to be familiar with before you kick off your program and your funding. You may already have some ideas, but we cannot stress strongly enough that it would be very, very beneficial for you to actually review the documents that we have prepared for you, because some of them are new for this session. Some of it will be familiar to you, and I absolutely acknowledge that in the room today we certainly have a lot of very experienced grant folk, and we've certainly got some that are new to the process. So really looking forward to sharing all of the content with you today. For some of you it will be a bit of a review, some of it will be brand new, so apologies if it's something that you think it might be old hat, but it's always worth hearing again. Better twice than not at all. So I'll just kick off with the slides today, and then after I've finished, I'll hand over to Keith, and then we'll do a little bit more discussion and specific grants-based tips and tricks. So welcome to a new round of strategic priority grants. It's really exciting to have this one out there again. And if you've been in libraries as long as I have, you certainly will know that the benefits through grants continue over years. Your partners, the new ideas that you can try, things that you can pilot, and the learnings that you get are so valuable to our library services and the library network as a whole. So thank you for coming today. We're going to be talking about our strategic priority grants today, which are provided biannually. So every 2 years, we're alternating between an SPG, I'll just refer to it as SPG from here, and the first 5 Forever grants. So we alternate between years, so you'll know when one is coming up. The strategic priority grants always have a slightly different focus. We respond to priorities for public libraries, Queensland and state government priorities, which can change over time. And it's always referring to an outcome that is over and above business as usual. So these are the ones where it's something exciting for you to try, something new, or something that you've always wanted to have a go at. This is your opportunity to put that plan into action or get that folder back out of the drawer of the thing that you've always wanted to try. The information that I'm going to be talking about today is absolutely all freely available on the Public Libraries Connect webpage, so don't feel like you have to take lots of notes. This session is being recorded, so I'll keep it clean, and you need to go and have a look at the programs and grants section on PL Connect, and then under that you'll find grant opportunities, and under that there is the SPG grants page. So everything that we're referring to today is readily available for you to go and review. So we've just given you an overview on the first slide just to show you that it is contributing to new challenges, incorporating learnings, and as I said, above business as usual. All right, I'm going to click on my screen and see if I can actually move to the next slide. All right, things to remember. The strategic priority grants for this particular session have been informed by the Love Your Library market research, and hopefully the Love Your Library market research is something that is not new to you, but if this is the first time that you're hearing about it, it's a fantastic piece of research. I can't recommend highly enough going and having a look at it. State Library commissioned Proof Research, a research company, an external contractor, to undertake market research in late 2022, early 2023. And what they did was actually investigated community perceptions of libraries. They talked to users, non-users and lapsed users, and they talked to nearly 2,000 folk across Queensland to really get a bit more of an in-depth look into the library usage, why they wouldn't go, what their perceptions were, and it's fascinating reading. Seriously, after being in libraries for so long, you have some pre-established ideas of why you think people lapse or why people stop going or start going, and I learned things that I'm like, really, that's true. So it's certainly worth going through and having a look at the research in particular, and that is available on the grants page. We also asked about how we could increase and broaden visitation and deepen visitor engagement. So there are certainly things in that research that also give you sort of ideas towards directions that might increase engagement or get folks in the door. It also was the result of the pandemic. So the context, as we know, Queensland-wide, this exacerbated many challenges that were already happening. We were already sort of struggling and competing with people in their busy lives, and particularly online engagement to attract attendances in our programs and libraries. And so that significant decline in library visitation was only sort of made more obvious by the impact of COVID across our libraries and our councils. And since COVID has dissipated, and we now are awaiting exciting flu influenza, some areas in membership participation have continued to decline, and that's a statewide thing. Some individual councils might be lucky enough to still have, really invested locals. So I'm speaking in generalities, and if you're bucking the trend, that's fantastic. But across the board, this has been the situation. And so we really are hoping for the strategic priority grants to start creating that lift and bringing libraries back into everybody's thinking and becoming the answer to many questions that they didn't know that they had. The statewide participation in programs, even since COVID has plateaued, we had an initial lift, but now it looks to have sort of evened out again. So we really are hoping that these grants will then support libraries in this bigger discussion and conversation about putting ourselves back into the communities. So the research findings help you build on your existing strengths and also inform State Libraries' future projects. So State Libraries' response to the Love Your Library research are going to be doing a lot more advocacy initiatives to promote the diversity and value of library services, do a lot more celebrating of what is actually happening in public libraries and IKCs. And also, and looking forward to this one, you'll be seeing a marketing and advertising campaign over the next couple of years. It's not tomorrow, we're still just putting out the request for offer, but the consultation period for that has begun, and we're really looking to put content into the media where people will find it, talking about those core services that libraries provide and those core, the staff, the connection, the community that is a benefit of state library membership throughout Queensland. So I look forward to seeing that soon. And the Strategic Priorities Grant is also part of this application and lifting and amplifying of what libraries do for the Love Your Libraries, a response to the Love Your Libraries research. So the grant itself, super exciting. We're looking for the big ticket items. So you're looking for projects between 25,000 to 50,000. So anything in the round. We're not, if you're looking for something smaller, this probably isn't the grant round for you, because we really are looking for ones that will make, an impact. And there are certainly other grant funds, sources of grant funding that your council can explore if there is something, that's sort of more on the smaller end of this. When you are looking and thinking about your grant opportunity, we have got the high level strategies there, the things that we would really like you to consider, enhancing awareness, supporting your community, deepening your engagement. I've already mentioned the Love Your Library research. Please do review that. The grant guidelines are chock full of all the information that you need. And in particular, the grant guidelines give you the selection criteria and the weightings. And I'm sure Keith is going to mention that in some detail later on, but just really noting, where it is a competitive grant, therefore there will be scores, and you want to grab as many points as you can on the sections that are the most, that are weighted the most heavily. And in particular, the selection guidelines, there's allocated weightings there, so you can see where to really put your focus when you're applying for your grant application. We've also got a comprehensive, and it is really comprehensive, collection of case studies and examples. And also there are some in the room today whose councils have been highlighted as a best practice in plenty of the areas. So there's a very big list to give you ideas or to give you some concepts around particularly what worked for other councils of similar sizes, because we certainly have a range of councils there today. And also too, on the web pages in PL Connect, you can go back over the last few years and see which councils were successful, and that's probably a conversation if you see something there with your library colleagues, talking to them about what their success measures were, because in particular, that's certainly something that assessors are looking for. To how do you know that it worked? What is something that's countable? What is something that is tangible? What is something that you can look back and go, we know this succeeded because of X. And so I really recommend going and having a look at those as well. In case of questions, we've got the frequently asked questions, and that will be added to and enhanced as the period of while we're all working on our applications continues. But the big ones that are there at the moment are just the things that the grant can't be used on. So sorry, I'm just going to put on my government hat and say that you can't. You can do it for everything else except for activities that are already funded under existing agreements, so you can't double dip. Can't be business as usual. We have talked about that before. It can't be retrospective deficit funding, which actually means things that you put into place before the grant period began. So it has to be something that is started new, or if it is adding on to something that you have already done, really make the case of why this is a new thing. And not just a continuation of the old thing, even if the old thing was a fantastic success. Come up with a way to expend is part of it, but extend and move it into a new audience or a new community or a new service. Major renovation of building is out. Sorry, you can't put on a new tea room or start a makerspace. Acquisition of materials to be added to standard or core libraries. So sorry, you can't add to collection items there, and any staff wages that are not specifically connected to the delivery of this grant. I'm sure there are many others that will come up today, and please, if you're unsure about any of it, jump on the phone to the friendly folk in LGC. Me in particular, I'm there. I've read all the documents. I would love to talk to you about upcoming projects. Otherwise, please chat about it today. Other than that, just remember when things are due. So I've just talked about, I've got ahead of myself. So talking about all the models, activating spaces, targeting programs and contributing to broad outcomes, and the due dates. So this is what we're looking at. Applications close. It's midnight on the 9th of July. So if anyone feels like they do their best work between 10 and 12, go for it. And you'll see on the screen there the key dates for when applicants will be notified and when, importantly, acquittal is due. So you've got 12 months between the 1st of November and 31st of October. All right, I'll pause there and just glance at Gina if there was any questions. No, I'll be handing over to Keith. Let me just relinquish my sharing.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll just get mine up. There we go. Great to be here once again, folks. Thank you for joining us this morning as well. I'm just going to give a brief overview of do's and don'ts, top tips in terms of grants writing specific to the SPG. But Michelle has obviously very comprehensively covered off on some of the identifiables, the pillars, the steadfast that you must match, meet, and requirements basically in terms of qualifications for the grant, and what is seen as a priority area what you must adhere to. But in terms of grants writing, which I'm going to talk to very much, it's about the 3 C's. A well-written grant application is clear, concise, and compelling, or short, succinct, and to the point. So again, you got to look at the parameters, the word count, the focal points in terms of the marking scheme, as Michelle's related to, basically what's going to have merit and worth and value as deemed by state library. So very much think about this in terms of drafting, editing, proofreading. It's not going to happen basically in terms of one application process only. While Michelle, I agree, maybe some people do the best work in the last 2 hours, the midnight hour, the bewitching hour. We have found from experience that people don't. So I can't advocate here to anyone to do a last minute grant application because it's not going to work. So I think now is the time to start this week and think about your project, think about your budget, and think about basically what you're putting forward and where it matches and aligns to what government want to achieve. Basically, here's your actual identifiables. Stick to the script. Very much basically what it's not what necessarily you want to achieve as a library, what conjointly you're going to achieve with the state library for the benefit of your patrons. It's all about the end users at the end of the day, obviously, that are using a public library service wherever you're based in Queensland. So very much stick to the three and find about incorporating these three into your narrative, into your story, into your basically your business case. And that's what we're looking for at the end of the day. So that you need to be thinking about these top 10. All right. And not only in terms of best practice model, but obviously specifically to the SPG as well. So very much it should be an awakening for some, but also a reiteration, as Michelle said, for others, basically about how we're developing on being previous SPG grant recipients. And we're actually moving forward and it's becoming version 2.0, version 3.0 of a grant fund or a program or initiative that's already in place that we're doing as well. So build and leverage on the good news story and the good works you've already done as a public library, whether it's with the SPG grant or other grants that you have received, basically. Show the runs on the board, sell, because a grant application is a glorified sales pitch. Tell us how good you are, what you do, how you do it, basically. Plans, processes, procedures, resourcing, logistics, staff, and how you manage that through time management, project management. So there's a lot to think about. I appreciate that. And you're downloading a lot today again before you look at the resources. But as Michelle said, everything you want is there on the web page. And feel free to reach out to the State Library if you have questions, basically, and look at those questions that are coming up as well, the frequently asked questions as well. And obviously avail of the opportunity here today as well, very much so. And again, I'm very much that you don't diverse from everything I'm showing you here, basically. And this is your narrative. It's adapting this narrative into your own plan, basically, because the preconception is that you come with the plan, all right? You don't see the grant and then conceptualize the plan. That's cart before horse. It's very much that the plan's been sitting there and you're looking to resource it in terms of financing or funding as a library at the end of the day. And SPG is one, but and only but one of the grant opportunities you should be applying for across public and private sector if eligible to apply for that at the end of the day. So that is going to be your biggest task and challenge, is adherence to what the State Library are saying is best practice model, is your best practice model, and you're incorporating that narrative against that at the end of the day. All right, so strategic projects, I mean, I'm just extrapolating here what I would focus on if I'm writing towards this, the key phraseology and words, physical visitation, social connections, activation spaces, targeting programs, highlight and enhance the role. For me, public libraries aren't even public libraries anymore. What are they? They're community hubs. That's what they are. And so very much we've moved way beyond books. And so everyone knows that basically there's a multitude of reasons why people come into public libraries now for different needs, wants, and avail of different services. Talk about that and highlight that basically, and highlight that you are a community hub as much as you are a public library at the end of the day. That's what you're putting on in training, education, public programs, initiatives, events, user space, all these different engagement, and then for different facets and features and sectors of society, right? Multicultural, Aboriginal, young, old, okay? All these different things, okay? So this is your mind map now as a library, thinking of where we are to where we need to be and how do we justify funding to get us there at the end of the day. Okay, so as was highlighted already, again, just go back to these fundamentals every time you're writing it. Make sure you're on point and on narrative all the time, basically. And obviously make it practical in terms of the application funding that you're applying for. It's not going to fund anything beyond the remit of what's specified between $25,000 and $50,000. So that may be contributory funding that you're seeking to because you've sourced funding from other aspects of your own budget, or from other funding that's out there at the end of the day. So show how it's contributing towards that at the end of the day, okay? But it is scale and nature, and be mindful of that. Obviously focusing on First Nations communities as well, very, very important, basically, and looking at, is that an opportunity for you there as well, where you have, or you want to engage moving forward in what you're doing as well. So it's a focal point for a reason, and very much incorporating that as well. I'm the obligation is not on you to conceptualize this, working with Aboriginal entities, basically, co-jointly to roll out that program initiative to get the quantifiable result, okay? But as I said, clear, concise, compelling, right? It's what I named my 3 children, so I can remember it myself, all right? So it's very much, again, clear, concise, compelling is way you need to write a well-written grant application. Short, succinct, and to the point. I get a lot of waffle and wordology as an assessor, not needed. I get a lot of speculative as an assessor, not needed. All right, make a statement, back it up, evidence, facts and stats, tangible data from your own reports, from state library reports, and what's happening basically in your sector across the board. So have a plan. You know, for any grant, you need to be extrapolating from a business plan, a master plan, a project plan. Plan comes first, as I said, plus the budget. Then comes the ask, not the other way around. And have a process. And this is probably time management, project management in terms of who's going to write the grant. Are you going to have a grant writing team? Do you have a grant writing officer? Grants officer within council is going to help you with that as well. If not, who's going to do this? What skill set and expertise? Because you're going to need the time. I know people think, oh, I've got just under a month, basically. That time will go fast. And given that you have to write, I'm advocating that you write drafts of this, not just one draft and hope for the best and do a last minute grant application. It's very much about getting together this week and looking at the go, no go in terms of this basically as a project and the feasibility of applying for it as a grant. Because time and capacity is your biggest issue. Time to write it and capacity to deliver it. What actually happens if you get the grant? That always comes as a surprise to library services when I work with them. Keith, we got the grant. What do we do now? What you said you would in the grant application? Oh, we don't do any of that, Keith. We made that up. We don't do any of that. All right. Not what I want to hear. So it's very much, again, you need to think about, you may actually get the grant, and then you got to have those plans and processes in place to deliver on that funding as well. So think about right now, even before you apply for the grant, think about the auditing, the acquittal, and the evaluation as well. So you may just get the grant. Okay, I don't want this to come as a surprise to you when you get the grant at the end of the day. So what am I advocating? Putting in a grants process in your organization, not there already. To some degree it will be because it's local government. But again, it's the preemptive, getting grants ready, plans, process, procedures to apply. Second part is writing the grant. And the third part is delivering. And that's against time and capacity, okay? Which is project management, time management. So no last minute grant applications. It's not going to work. It's going to give you a pain in your head. You feel an onerous obligation basically, and you'll be nervous and stressed. Who wants that? So at the end of the day, time management, now work back from the deadline. Optimally, I'm saying the latest you get this in should be 72 hours in advance, 48 hours, all right? Now, I appreciate there are circumstances which are going to prevent that to a degree, and you will be submitting on the last day. I've no problem with that, but Michelle and her colleagues and Gina will be basically inundated with applications on the last day, especially basically at that bewitching hour when we're having our party in the library, basically all waiting for those last minute grant applications to come in. So very much, again, think about this, make it easier for yourself. Make it easier for yourself to legitimize the next couple of weeks and what needs to happen, which is time management, project management. And simply put, and what I've said as a consultant for 15 years in Australia, answer the question you're asked, not the question you think you're asked. All right? You did this in high school, you did this in university, you did this in TAFE, you answered the question so you could get the marks. Answer the question, read the question, read the key words in the question. I just want you to answer the question. All right? So I've had questions before in the past, please provide a brief overview of your organization. And libraries have given me the response. We were founded in the library in 1856 in Toowoomba. In 1857, we opened up our first branch. Around 1857, you got to get to 2023, and we got 500 characters. All right. Do I need to know everything about you? Do I need you to answer the question? Yes. Okay. If I want more, I'll come looking for more. Just answer the question at the end of the day. Normally, I get applications that look like that. Tell you what, give us the money, and then we'll come up with the idea. No. Very much have the idea as a quantifiable idea. So it's building and leveraging on an idea that's already got funded or has great traction in the community as a public library service already. Secondly, you're bringing a new product or service to market that hasn't been seen before in a library service in Queensland. And it's innovative and sustainable. And it basically is an opportunity for the state library to fund this because it may be existence in South Australia or Tasmania, but it's not existence in Queensland. All right, you got to think outside the box here. All right, and look at basically your previous grant applications. Now, I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel here, but I'm a big believer in not copying and pasting either. which means quintessentially go back and look at your previous SPG grant applications. Is there anything there you can utilize rather than plagiarize? Is there anything you can reinvent, repurpose, and help you with the applications moving forward rather than starting from scratch every single time? Grant writing team, can you write a grant on your own? No, I don't think so. So you're going to have to work with finance, do your budget basically, and your own government authority. You're going to have to work with your colleagues in terms of implementation strategy. You're going to have to think about basically even working with marketing and comms, or your grants writer, grants officer within council to help you put together the narrative as well at the end of the day. In other words, resource yourself. Look at who else can help you with this application. Don't think it's an onerous obligation where you've got to do all the heavy lifting. You've got a couple of weeks now to reach out with your colleagues and see you can value add in that space as well. And I'd advocate quite strongly you do that. And this is your grants process from stronger organizations in the States. You identify the need, conceptualize the project, do the research of what grants funding is out there. You submit an application for that chosen grants funding round, become the funder's choice because it's a well-written grant application. You do the implementation administration of said grant funding. You do the reporting and the evaluation, and then you start the process all over again. It's easy when you say it fast in an Irish accent, isn't it? But very much you got to think about this is the way you put together a grant structure. And I'm trying to teach you not only in terms of the SPG, but all other grants you should be applying for. There's huge amounts of grant funding all the time out there for you that you need to be looking at. All right. And again, you need to be thinking more and more towards philanthropic as well. And that's another discussion for another day around eligibility about being auspiced. But philanthropists have a great interest now in public libraries and what they were. So we're going back to the Carnegie model of the turn of the last century. Okay. So very much, again, you need to think about how you're putting yourself out there and getting funding. So when writing your grant, though, you need to highlight the significance of your project. Don't exaggerate the scope of the project and proofread. Now, not to sound like your primary school English teacher, but the amount of typos and issues that I see, just proofread it. Grammarly, spell check, they're beautiful things, all right? Have a go at that basically at the end of the day, because it's the fact that in 2023, I'm seeing the following on grant applications outside of public libraries, but I'm seeing emojis, selfies, and text language, all right? It's a business document. It's an investment, not a gift. So it has to be written in an articulate fashion. And I'm sure you will, but it just is to pull you up basically to say, don't fall into the pitfalls basically of a typo letting you down at the end of the day, basically, all right? So very much proofread it and edit it. And look at your eligibility, obviously, which most of you will be able to apply for, so it's not a problem there. But always think about that, because you should have a concerted focus on what your top 5, top 10 grants in a calendar or financial year are and what you're applying for anyway, regardless. Okay. And what's required, right? This is kind of a mini checklist you need to think about, not only in terms of this grant, but any other grant you're applying for. They need to be building capacity, have a sustainability of approach. You're creating a profile for your LGA, where you're located geographically. You're planning grant application. You're proactive, not reactive, because you know it's coming up. So you're resourcing that grant funding accordingly, not waiting for the last minute until the grant's announced. You know, a lot of the funding is recurrent, so you actually target that well in advance. You're all about the acquittal of the grant, reporting, the evaluation. You're extrapolating from a project plan, business plan, and CapEx, which is your budget. And your application connects with the funding body, communicates quite clearly what the ask is to the funding body, and shows how you're going to deliver on time and on budget. Okay. So what they're looking for from you, well, who are you? What do you want the money for? How is this linked to your strategic plan? How will it impact? And most importantly, even who will it impact, which is general public? Strategy and storytelling is what the blend of a well-written grant application is. What's the total project value? Because you may be only asking for funding for a pilot project. And people give to people, not to projects. That's relationship management. Have to know you to like you to give you the money. So raise your hand above the parapet and get out there and talk the good talk about what you're doing as a public library service. Basically, create a profile for yourself. Even not even for this grant, in the short term, in the long term, basically build a profile for your public library service and what you're doing. They're not just buying an output, they're buying an outcome. Don't just tell me how you're going to do it, tell me what's going to happen because of it. What's the translative effect, not only in your own LGA, but across the state of Queensland, that can be propagated as a best service model or a project or program that other libraries can share with it universally. Okay. To invest in positive impact, something tangible happens, evidence of demand. If you build it, will they come? This is your field of dreams model. Basically, show me indicatively, quantify, because I need to see qualitative and quantitative data to show indicatively that there is going to be a footfall threshold to show that people are going to come in and utilize this. You don't just think it's a good idea. Everyone in the community thinks it's a good idea to do this. All right, proof of outcome, and for applicants to stop talking about activities and talk about the impacts, those tangibles, as I said. So your checklist, are there grants for us? Are we eligible to apply for all those grants? We know what grants are available then, and then we do the submission on that. Then we do the work and delivering on that grant because we've been awarded the funding. Then we do the reporting and acquittal. Print it out, laminate it, stick it on the staff fridge, folks. That is your actual modus operandi of how you're going to do a grants in a very succinct way. That's what it is. Okay. There's loads of opportunities out there. You can't just look at this grant as the one-off opportunity. Massive opportunities out there in terms of other grants as well. So it's good to get this right now moving forward. Right, clear understanding of the activity's objectives, clear and detailed description, identify strategies and key elements and demonstrate. Now, this is not in the grant. This is not literature from the grant. This is my literature and what I say to my client base, basically. And I would adhere to this project, the deliverables, how it's going to benefit your community, your target group, and the amount of funding sought. I don't want rounded figures. I want exact figures. This is what it's going to cost. All right. Oh, it's going to cost around 20,000. Around 20,000 is what? All right. So very much your budgeting is very, very important. So you need to look at this in terms of matter of factness, resourcing it, evidence-based, substantiation, etc. Okay. How the proposal will complement existing services already and resources in the LGA. What else is happening from other units, community services, sport, in the arts, whatever the case may be across your LGA, and your links basically. So those external relationships, again, how you're going to make sure you quantified evidence to those people who are going to come in and utilize and avail. So the stakeholders, relevant organizations, whether it be Country Women's Association, U3A, Men's Shed, whoever the case may be. All right, just those in Probus, Lions, Rotary, whatever the case may be. Your experience in establishing, delivering these projects, I'd love to see that as a library service. Your proposed outcomes and how you're going to maintain it, because it's a big one, right? So I'm going to give you startup or seed funding. You're not going to stop the project once the money runs out. You're going to show me how you have a sustainability of approach and how you're going to manage that and mitigate any issues that are going to come along the way. And what is your stakeholder engagement and relationship management, external as much as internal? Okay. Evidence, show me basically how you engage and have engaged with State Library in the past, basically remind them of the good news story and the good work you've done if you've been a previous grant recipient as well, highlight that. And strategies for ongoing assessment, basically show me again, you have a plan, a process, and procedure in place of how you're going to manage and appropriate funding on time, non-budget for yourself, let alone for State Library reporting and acquittal processes. Governance. All right, I want risk assurance that this is going to be a risk management, probity, transparency, authenticity, and sell me your expertise, skills, and qualifications and experience as a council, let alone the people in the council and the library service that are doing this. Okay. And a lot of people I work with in the library service across Australia, and I work with multiple library services across Australia, always talk to me about effective and efficient delivery. And I like that. It's a good government narrative that they subscribe to in Canberra anyway. But how you do things effectively and efficiently. And they build out then the resourcing around that and their narrative around that. And they're about continuous improvement and evaluation as a library service. Right? You don't rest on the laurels, take things for granted. It's all about a continuity of approach. I like that. That gives me assurances. Okay. And I want assurances because, you know, government talks about it in terms of federal government, total quality management or program logic, which is rhyme, reason, sense, rationale. Okay. What's a successful proposal? Well, it's within the funding body's area of scope of giving and the amount of dollar value on offer. Sufficient documentation supported with facts to substantiate your idea. Quintessentially those two things. Why are projects declined? Well, I've synopsized this down to 2 slides. When you read through these are a matter of fact. Nothing here that should be surprising to you. Just don't fall into these pitfalls. All right, don't make the obvious errors and where people do all the time. Okay. People talk around the subject rather than at the subject in a grant application. Can't subscribe to that. Can't be lost in translation. This can't be a where's Wally exercise. Okay. It's very much, again, it needs to be blatant. It needs to be there, right? Because as a grants assessor myself, I read a multitude of grants in a given day Not the most exciting day of my life, I'll be honest with you, basically. All right. But at the same time, it's very much that you must have impact statements. First 20 words, last 20 words is where it's won or lost. I love bullet points. I love subheadings. I love white space. So if the actual formatting allows, make it legible, make it understood, make it translatable. All right. Less is more. This is a glorified tweet you're writing. Okay. It's very much been matter of fact and straight to the point. Don't lead me on a wild goose chase. All right. I don't have the time to indulge. Okay. So it's very much, again, be straight to the point. That's why I'm saying it's a glorified tweet. It's either on the page or it's not on the page. I'm not going to fill in the gaps for you as a grants assessor. Okay. And that's second stage there as well. Just be matter of fact about it. Okay. And that should suffice. As I said, I love facts and stats. I love good story. And a lot of the work we're doing in public libraries now is around business storytelling. It's one of my most popular courses, basically telling the story of where you come from, where are you, where you're going as a public library service. So you're not lost in translation. Okay. And people don't have a stereotypical perception of what a library is compared to what a library is now, to what it was when they were a child. It's a completely different entity. Okay. So again, don't fall into these pitfalls. And as I said, the second last bullet point is quintessential: insufficient evidence the project can sustain itself beyond the life of the grant. Very, very important. Okay. So you need to be thinking about measuring your outcomes. What's your goal statement, your objective statement, your vision statement, or mission statement as a library? Interesting, I go out and ask that at libraries and they look at me and go, what? And then like, yeah, you should have one as a library. What are you setting out to achieve as a library? And they usually give me the council one. I went, you're a bit different than the council. What are you setting out to achieve as a library? Activities and tasks that are necessary to accomplish the objective, benefits or results for each objective that leads to measuring outcomes and performance indicators of success. Break it down, build it back up in front of me in terms of the grant application as well. Prove it to me. I get at this a lot. We are the premier library service in this area. Well, that's easy because you are the only library service in this area. So it's easy to say you're premier. So very much substantiate the good work that you're doing. Break it down for me, sell it, as I said. Right? I don't necessarily know every facet of what you do. I know probably a lot as a state library, but do I know everything? No. So you need to sell back to me that you have the proven assets, resources, logistics, personnel to do this. Again, that it aligns the state government. What you want to achieve is what they want to achieve, and you play nicely in the sandpit. Not only with state library, but also with other entities, other regional library services, metro library services, other entities within LGAs, other community organizations. Show your presence, your traction, your validity in the community. So show me how you are that central community hub. Okay. And the diversity of entities that use your services. Okay. Need for funding, the commercial potential. Two favorite acronyms and grants, very popular: WEFM and VFM. WEFM is what's in it for me. Any funding body is going to say that. And value for money is the government's favorite phrase, value for money, because it's taxpayers' money. You must adhere to both of those in terms of your grant ideology. It's a market opportunity to fund into your area where you haven't before. So tell me where that opportunity lies. Management capability. Show me the strength and art and people, the great people that are running the library service, and their skill set, their experience, their qualifications, their know-how, management of previous programs of this ilk and nature. And the local, state, or national benefits, as said, the add-on effect, that if I fund you, it can be propagated across the state as a best practice service model or project or initiative. So know the program rules, plan your application, be creative but honest. Don't say you can do it in 12 months when it's going to take you 18 months to do it. Research successful grants. Look at where the funding has gone before for what projects as an indicative. Don't copy and paste. Don't very much, again, utilize rather than plagiarize. Provide information required, no more, no less. Answer the question you're asked, not what you think you're asked, and no superfluous information. Again, it's either on the screen or on the page, or it's not there at all. Okay, so what do I really need to know from you? So it's about telling a story, painting a picture with words. Yes, it is. Get away from doing the last minute grant application with 5 minutes to go and press and send and hoping for the best. Proactive rather than reactive. You need a grants calendar. So this is just should be an indicative to you of all the other grants you should be looking at. People can only help you if they know you exist. Reach out. That relationship management. You should have relationship management outside of the funding round with state library all the time. And cultivating a relationship with that state library entity. All right. So it's very much, again, people can only help you if they know you exist. So profile you as a library service. So reporting, provide the data for the grant giver. 4 accountability principles I expect you to abide by: equity, access, transparency, and responding appropriately. Small questions serve as big ones. We have found in the past library services have spent an inordinate amount of time on what they perceive to be the bigger questions, to the detriment of the smaller questions. Optimize that, have a balance between, don't make sure, because I've had grant applications for public library services where they haven't signed it, budgets have had no totals, all right? Just the simple things, because they're in such a rush, because they're spending so much time on the bigger questions, they're not focusing on the little things. It's the little things that get across the line in life, not the big things, okay? And be aware of trade-off thinking as well, basically, in terms of if the goalpost can move, basically, if there's any amendments to it, we have a flexibility of approach about the design and implementation, not only of your writing of the grant, but also your implementation of the grant. Quintessentially, this is your first template. If you can get through this, you should write the grant. Who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? When do you do it? Why do you do it? And how much money do you want for it? In some way, shape, or form, I'm asking those questions in the grant application, particularly the why. Why you? Why here? Why now? So that is your first template. If you can answer those questions, proceed as is, go, no go with your grant. Okay? But the why. Why do you think it's a good idea? Why is it worthy of funding? Why is it going to have community impact or traction? Why is it needed? You have answers to those questions. And again, effectiveness and efficiency. Give me that reassurance. And government, certainly all levels of government, love inputs, outputs, outcomes. Quantify and qualify inputs, outputs, outcomes. Welcome to government grant speak. It is a new language. All right. It's the land of acronyms, as well as grant speak. So very much inputs, outputs, outcomes. Quantify and qualify everything. Do not be speculative in grants application. Okay, be tangible instead. So carefully follow the instructions, tailor proposals specifically to them. Positive language. We are, we will, not conditional language. If we get the money, something might happen with it, maybe. Right? Stick, we are, front end, positive, right? So it's very much shorter is better. Keep the proposal tight and details condensed. Document a need or problem on multiple levels, but be specific. All right. It's inverse pyramid. Start broad, but then narrow the focus basically down to the fundamentals of costs, delivery points, traction, results. Okay. So talk about the investment rather than gift. Focus on basic opportunities around problems. I would optimize the problem, if it is a problem, to 20-30% value in the narrative. The other 70-80% is a solution-based strategy. Grants funding is only given for solutions, not problems. Too many grant applications I get are all about highlighting the problem. Can't give you the money for the problem, can only give you money for the solution. Provide a realistic assessment of the urgency. I know you need the money yesterday, but as I said, the project can't be deemed null and void because it's retrospective. It's very much that you need to think about basically that when's this going to happen, when are you going to optimize the funding within the bandwidth and the time frame that's already been specified by State Library. So project rationale, the why, to break it down even further, justification. In order to justify, you need to do what I've spelled out there in the slide. Demonstrate the need, describe the situation, opportunity, problem that exists, demonstrate the relevant, compelling problem that exists and how you want to alleviate it, and support it with evidence, whether that's qualitative or quantitative, whether that's community surveys, questionnaires, polls. All right, otherwise it's speculative. Break it down, build it back up again. Then it fits in with local programming and state government programming, state library programming, obviously, and include that compatibility in your argument as well. Very, very important. Budget, no artificial budget inflation, quintessentially is what I'm looking for. No padding out, cost what it costs. Legitimize everything, basically. All right. Shock horror, I did have an application years ago where people put in a budget line item of 100 2HB pencils. Is that project significant? I don't deem so. So very much, if you can't afford 100 2HB pencils, we're all in problems here, basically, if you don't have that in your budget, right? So it's very much, again, what is needed in the budget as a budget line item is quintessential to run this project initiative program, that you don't have the resourcing presently to do so, or take it to the next level that you already have it incarnated already in some way, shape, or form. All right. So again, it has to relate to the project itself, not the general operation costs of the library. And very much that basically needs to be in there. All right. And legitimize everything you're saying, break it down, get the quotes, etc. Don't do retrospective. Again, be very much about moving forward in terms of that narrative around your budget. Methodology, describing it basically, what's going to look like. All right. And there should be a clear pathway, as I said, linking stages. Spell it out to me. Spell it, what happens, right? So very much, again, that second bullet point here, brief recap of the need, objectives, and expected impacts of the project, but most certainly provide a very clear description and explanation of how you're going to go about achieving it. Spell it out to me. I am potentially uneducated to the initiative. Break it down, build it out. Do not dumb it down. That's a different thing completely. But teach me and learn, let me learn as to what the values of this are and how you're going to maintain it thereafter. Because after I read through that as an assessor, I should feel comfortable then how your project's going to work, the do's and don'ts of it. Okay. So evaluation, and I'm always quite surprised when I work with public library services across Australia. A lot of them do not have evaluation mechanisms. All right, I'm sure a number of you do. Congrats and kudos to you. But very much you need to have that evaluation process in place to keep and talk to that and sell that back to me, give me that reassurance, because it allows you to look at what's got the flexibility of approach, not only in terms of the design, but implementation. So very much, again, sell it back to me that you have that continuity of approach as an organization and an ardent approach to that, because it allows you then to look at what you need to continue, modify, or delete in terms of a flexibility and dynamic approach to your project service delivery. All right, so it may be prescribed, but ideally evaluations can happen monthly, quarterly, half yearly, yearly. All right, now you're going to have to do one, obviously obliged by the State Library, but inherently you should be doing one for yourself anyway, regardless. All right, as a best practice model. Okay. And you got to show me how it's going to happen and how it's going to be on track and have the continuity of approach. All right, rather than just opening the door and letting it wild basically and seeing what happens. No. Commonwealth Government Grants Administration, we colloquially as grants fraternity call them the 7 commandments. And I think you should look at these no matter what grant you apply for, particularly in the government remit or realm. And you can see what I've highlighted, how much in Canberra they do love the words effective and efficient. Okay. So if you stick with these 7, you're going to do quite well in grants writing. So these are your first 4. Quantify, qualify, sell it back to me. And these are your last 3. And again, number 7 is blatantly VFM, value for money, because it's taxpayers' money. So stick with these 7, you're going to do okay. So my top 10 tips: make it about your reader, your prospective client, which is the State Library. Answer the question, try not to waffle, make it clear what's in it for them, the return on investment. Be direct, give it to me straight, don't talk around the subject, talk at the subject. Avoid sweeping statements, give great examples of the work you've done previously or the grants you've been awarded. Remember, looks can kill. Well, if it's written in a sloppy manner, it reflects the organization that wrote it. Jog their memory if you've been in receipt of funding from before and remind them what a great job you did, and make a word perfect. Old journalistic adage, count your words and make your words count. And that's me, folks. I'm also on LinkedIn as well if you want to find me there. But questions, comments, clarification? Feel free to use the chat room or unmute yourself and talk to myself or Michelle.
Yep, I've just been brave and unmuted myself there. Thank you so much. I have now taken a page full of notes. Hopefully others also found that useful. And just considering what people are gathering their thoughts, just that concept of proofreading, and that is certainly something you just can't see what you've missed or what has been corrected to something else. We do that here. I can't emphasize that enough. And a colleague, a manager, somebody else who is not you. And also just that considering of the panel will be assessing this, and State Library will have membership on that panel, but there'll also be other folks in library land. So consider that they will know library business and will know, what the value of public libraries. And so consider that when you're framing your audience in your head, when you're considering that positive promotion of what you're doing in your positive language.
Yeah, and I think you can't see the wood from the trees, Michelle. So a lot of the time, I get public libraries asking me just to come in and edit and proofread. They write it themselves, then employ me basically in an ad hoc fashion, basically just come in and go through, play devil's advocate, red pen, track changes, send it back to them. Now, whether it's me or an internal colleague or basically another asset or resource, I'd advocate you use that process. Definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we've all heard about that halo effect, and even if you are, you know, explicitly not taking on, you know, mistakes or errors in a thing, you are subconsciously noticing that they are there. So there's a lot going on when the assessors are looking at these, and it's a lot, and they have to do it quickly. And so definitely the brevity, the clear, you know, there's only so much formatting you can, I think, do on Smarty Grants, but certainly there are opportunities for also uploading supporting documents and that sort of thing as well. So keep that in mind.
And I think you need to source those, and you need to look at what's pertinent and relevant to add, not about adding everything like a phone book, basically. And here's 117 supporting documents to justify my argument. I'm not going to read 117 supporting documents. So it's very much, again, that, you know, it's looking at this in terms of putting your best foot forward in a business case and an aptitude and resourcing against an ideology in terms of taking it from theory to practical. It sounds good, looks good, prove it. All right. So, and it's coming back to your own pillars of what you're trying to do as a state library service in terms of where the library is in its 2030 vision, basically, as a library service, or 2035 or 2040, and where the library needs to be as a community hub or an entity, basically, at the end of the day. And you know, I've seen different mindsets of that, and I'm open to that at the end of the day. But as I said, the common narrative now that I see across Australia, when I talk to librarians and work with librarians, is we're a community hub. We just so happen to do books, DVDs, courses, workshops, other facets and features, basically.
Yeah, the emphasis that State Library will always have is that deeply local impact. So going back to something that Keith said, you know, that it might be something that you've heard of from somewhere else, but it might be new for your community or significant for your community. And we want to see that why it is important for your library in your area with your community to try something new. So don't be concerned, you know, that it isn't, you know, the same as what someone else will put in. We're really looking for that unique local application of the funding.
Yeah, I mean, we had a library service that we were working with in the Northern Territory that had done, they'd looked at an initiative in Luxembourg. And fair play to them for finding it in Luxembourg. And they had looked at adapting it then in Northern Territory. And I went, that's genius. They looked at scaling, they looked at adaptability, they looked at different cohort of people that are going to use it. And they did that and they sold it. And I went, genius. So you know, just beyond the remit of like how you aligning Darwin to Luxembourg, but they saw an affinity and affiliation that they could do that.
All right, I'm just going to do a really awkward pause here so that anyone who's reticent to speak up can throw on a microphone and jump in.
Otherwise, I'm going to have to threaten you with the Irish jokes and Riverdance again, folks.
Yeah, look, I know I can't handle the silence on a webinar either, but I'm going to hold it.
Anyone, pick our brains while we're here. We had our opportunity you're never going to get. Talk to us about any facet or feature of your application process, or what you're thinking, or where the problems perceivably lie and where the solutions are. We can help you strategize that and come out with some answers for you before you go away today. We've scared them all into submission, Michelle.
No, it is hot in the silence. We've certainly got a comment in the chat, Nico, from I think it's Toowoomba, but thank you so much. No questions, lots to consider. There certainly is lots to consider. I've just gone back through the application guidelines just to remind myself of that weighting. And also too, you know yourself when you're having to do like a whole lot of job applications, you go, I don't want to read any of these. So the ones that you turf out are the ones that don't follow the rules. So following the rules is so important, just to make sure that you are considered, because people will be looking for ways of ranking you. And so just really knowing that you've got to, you know, pick one of those government priorities to align to, and definitely, absolutely pick something in the Love Your Library that you will be responding to. And that measuring success, it's 15%. That's not nothing. So even though you've talked about, you know, what the project is and what the need is, 15% in measuring success, I think gives you an indication of what's important. When you're doing your application, we want to see that there is the capacity to know what success looks like, and the capacity to deliver something that you can go back. We know it worked for these reasons, or we know, you know, this is how we know what we know.
as Gina said there, raise your hand if you want to be unmuted. We're happy to take any questions.
So far,
Thank
it's
you,
all
Marty.
just compliments. Yeah.
Look, again, to emphasize that this is a great grant opportunity for all of your applicants out there. I think it is. It's fantastic. That's a recurrent grant continually by the State Library. But saying that as well, what about all the other grants, as I said? And I think you need to look at this from all the other grants that are available from other state bodies and their other facets and features, and collaboratively working with other LGAs as well and other library services that are adjoined to you in your own geographic region of Queensland. Secondly, your eligibility around, as I said, philanthropic grants, whether you need to be auspiced because you don't have the DGR or charitable or ACNC status to actually apply, which a number of library services are doing. Number of library services are setting up their own charitable foundations as well, basically, where they become a legally incorporated entity to apply for that philanthropic funding, which is huge, folks, in terms of millions and millions of dollars that are out there. And even they're more interested than ever before in public libraries, because public libraries have taken the community stance now. We're not just a library service anymore. We're a community facet and feature, and we provide so much for the library, for the general public, excuse me. So you need to be thinking of the wide ranging scale. I'm not trying to give you extra homework or put more obligation on you, because as I said, you need to create that grant writing team or work with your colleagues in council. But there's so much funding out there that libraries should be looking at, and other sources of funding. The fact that I'm going into libraries and talking about fundraising, sponsorship, crowdfunding, bequests, the amount of bequest funding that's coming into libraries is huge. All right. You got to have a plan, a process, procedure of managing that. All right. And so if all these generous people wanting to work and give money to libraries, people want to leave a bequest to the library. A living bequest now is the popular one, so it's not even when they passed on, it's actually doing it now. All right. So huge opportunities, basically.
But for this particular opportunity, we're just coming up to the end of it now. No one needs to die. It's going to be okay.
Thanks for that reassuring statement.
I've just put my, and I have spelled it correctly. Yes, I've just put my email into the chat in case I am new to folks in the room. Always happy to talk about this, and I am absolutely not on a panel, so I can chat with you, knowing that there isn't putting anything at risk with any assessment. So please contact us at LGC, or absolutely use the resources that you've got within your community, because those who are already doing successful grants, be it philanthropic or within your council or elsewhere, you look for the help that's going to be connected deeply locally to what you are trying to achieve. But otherwise, if there are no other questions, no, I'll close it there. Thanks again for your interest. And again, tell your colleagues we will be doing this again on Thursday around lunchtime. Thanks again, folks. And thanks again, Keith.
Thank you very much, folks. Have a great day. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.